I had to use one of my Apple Centric t-shirts for this. Yes, I know it's Snow White, but she's of course famous for having been poisoned by an apple. Also, I don't have any that have the, Wicked Queen, the evil queen on them. I have one that's just Snow White holding an apple. If you've seen any of my Disney videos, you've possibly seen it. I actually get to bring up Disney in this one a little bit, in this video. So, I'm going to talk about Vegapunk's big brain and my Disney-centric brain and how I can find connections to Disney in a lot of things. Because I am a Disney nerd. So, hence the whole 70-some, 80-some, 90-some Disney/Pixar movie reviews that are on this channel. So, let's talk about Vegapunk's giant brain. So, we find out a fair bit more about Vegapunk's brain in this chapter. We know that he actually has a giant brain. We found out that he ate the no me, which he bites his tongue while he's trying to say it, which is just like, okay, smartest man in the world can't figure out how to say something without biting the giant tongue that's sticking out of his mouth. Me, which is just funny. Which probably translates to the brain fruit or the smart fruit, something along those lines. I'm pretty sure it's just the brain fruit. Which is just funny, and the way that that's kind of designed, phonetically, I'm assuming in Japanese. Still funny in English a little bit too, I guess. It explains that he was born a natural brainiac, born a brainiac man, extremely smart, which of course he says brainiac, which makes me think of the super villain Brainiac in DC Comics. That is one of Superman's biggest problems, rivals, rogues gallery, take your pick. Kind of made me think of that. He's also has Brainiac also has various other variations of himself that are all weird forms of clones and or descendants of him. So I guess a little bit similar to Vegapunk in that regard. But we find out that since he ate the no me, that he is able to, his brain, as he gains more and more knowledge, his brain just continuously grows. And Bonnie's like, well, what the heck happened to your head? It looks like you, cut it off or something like that. It was so much bigger the last time I saw you. He's like, well, yeah, I did. I just, sliced my brain off. Which, to any normal human being, which Vegapunk clearly is not, that just sounds like a horrible idea, but it means I was right. I was right. Or, well, about as close to right as I could get in this case. When I made the several comparisons to Dr. Finkelstein from Nightmare Before Christmas, who, of course, throughout the course of the movie ends up, taking out half of his brain and putting it into this other version that's like a female version of himself that is taller and can walk and not confined to a wheelchair and has a romantic relationship, which is just weird. But it means I was right in that regard, which is cool. He took it apart and he put it into other pieces, and he put pieces of it into the other 6 Vegapunks, which we learn about, and that there is actually the other giant portion of his brain that is actually within Egghead Island, that's in the top of Egghead Island, where it says Punk Records, as in record keeping, which makes sense. And we see that, and that's what he's explaining to Luffy and Bonnie and Jinbei and Chopper. And Bonnie, he's like, Bonnie, I haven't seen you since you were a little girl. And she's just like, what the heck happened to your head? Luffy was like, so you cut your brain out. Did that make you an idiot? I'm like, oh God, Luffy. Well, fair enough. And Vegapunk's explaining that, the apple core thing that's on his head is, of course, it's an antenna. It's designed to be able to make it that, because he explains it as even now as we're talking, my brain is continuously growing. Also, I was born with an eidetic memory. It means that he can't ever forget something, so brain bleach would be extremely difficult for him to use. It's like, I can't repress any of my memories. It makes things extremely difficult whenever we have family dinners. So we of course, we learn that about Vegapunk. We learn that that as it continuously grows, that there's this giant, basically most of his brain is sitting inside of this giant hangar, like an aircraft carrier hangar, I'm assuming, within Punk Records, and that him and the other 6 satellite bodies are all connected to it, and that basically it explains, well, we all kind of have the same personality-ish, like we all have the same intelligence level to a degree, but we all have like different personality aspects, which is of course where all the different, logic and evil and, flair and thinking and, wrath and, greed, desire and everything, where they all get split up with that, because then they each have like a slightly different thing to focus on. And the main one that I would say definitely has an extreme more focus than the others is definitely York, in regards to the fact that she is the one that does all the eating, sleeping, and dumping for all the rest of them. And that the other ones, I'm assuming, as I said before, it's probably somewhat of a placebo effect of the fact of, like, since they're all connected, they're all feeling like all the nutrition kind of seems to get, split up between all of them as she digests it, and then as, anything else needs to happen, they can do that. I would assume that if it ends up being that at some point in time, if any of the Vegapunks have like a slight break, I would assume it's not a problem if like any of them decided to eat something or decided to go to the bathroom or decided to take a nap, but I don't think that's really a major thing that happens for any of the other ones beyond probably the main Stella body. And, so we see some of that throughout the course of the beginning of the chapter. He explains, they all, once a day, all of us sync everything up, and all of the knowledge and everything, all the thoughts that we've had, the experiences that we have, get put into Punk Records every single day. Which, that makes sense. That does kind of make sense. That does make a fair amount of sense. But the thing that kept popping into my head when they were talking about Vegapunk's giant brain is the giant brain from Futurama. The giant flying, floating brain alien thingies that come to Earth and make everybody stupid, and the only one that's not affected by it is Fry, because he's his own grandfather, which is just weird in and of itself. I miss Futurama. I know it's coming back on Hulu. I need to figure out when I'm going to watch that. But we have that moment where we have, I just had the image of, I am a gigantic brain pop into my head. There's like 2 episodes where the brains are like a big thing. One is like when they first show up and like Fry has to defeat them, and he like traps the lead brain, because like Nibbler explains to him, just like, you must make the lead brain leave Earth or defeat it somehow, and Fry like traps it into a book of like horrible grammar and spelling and makes it, make it leave Earth and everything, and all the rest of them, leave, and then the Nibblers show up and eat the other brains that are still there. As I said, Futurama is a weird series, and it would probably get along just fine with One Piece, considering the fact that I'm pretty sure that Farnsworth and Vegapunk would probably get along just fine. Please, dear God, someone make fan art of that, of Vegapunk and Farnsworth. I want to see that. Vegapunk, Farnsworth, Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty, Doc Brown, what's the, I can never remember the name of the scientist that's on The Simpsons. That's like the one with the weird spiky hair. I can't remember his name. I never really cared for him, but like all of them together would be kind of like just like cartoon fictional mad scientists all together. That would be fun. I'd find that funny. But so yeah, I had the gigantic brain thought. And, as he states, it's like, as it grows, it gains more and more. And, as I gain more intelligence, as I gain more knowledge, like he read through all the books, that were in the O'Hara library that ended up on Elbath, that he read through all of those, and he has like an eidetic memory of all of those. So if Clover had written down anything about what the name of the ancient kingdom was, it's in Vegapunk's head, which means that all the rest of them have access to this. Which kind of just makes me think about the fact of like, okay, Lilith was ready to, well, probably not like straight up kill the Straw Hats, but at the very least take them hostage and then like, ransom them to the world government or whatever, to get their bounties and everything, had Shaka not stepped in. But the other thing is, wouldn't Lilith know that Vegapunk, that like the Stella body and the Logic body want to talk to the Straw Hats? Wouldn't she know that? I don't know. Maybe it's, well, because we do kind of seem that they seem to have some of their own separate thoughts. Because Shaka still had to communicate with Lilith in order to tell her, it's like, hey, you're being an idiot. Do not try to provoke the Straw Hats. That is stupid. Bring them here. So we have that. We also have it that, Atlas interacted with Luffy and his group, but she didn't end up like telling them any information about like, oh yeah, you can go find the main Stella body. He wants to talk to you, or go find Shaka. He wants to have a conversation with you. We don't get that. We see them all talking with each other. So even though they probably to a degree have like some shared communication, a lot of it still has to be like verbally communicated, or possibly like, I don't know, whatever the Vegapunk's version of like texting is to each other, I guess would be a way of putting it. So there's that. Which we kind of see a difference between Logic and Shaka, or between Shaka and Lilith a little bit later in the chapter. But what else we end up seeing is, of course, Vegapunk he's like, well, my intention is to have it be that, first we get like this really happy look from Chopper, like, oh my god, you're so smart, that's so cool, which my thought was, okay, well, Vegapunk seems to be at least a somewhat better role model than Hogback was, way back in Thriller Bark when we found out about his past. So that's probably a step up in role models there, Chopper. But we also find out that Vegapunk wants to have it that his brain can be accessed like a giant library, a giant sea of knowledge to be shared with all mankind, to be shared all around the world. And that not only can people access it from all around the world to learn what Vegapunk has learned and what all the satellite bodies have learned, but also be able to put in their own findings. As in, because it's like, he's aware of the fact that there's other scientists around the world and everything like that. I mean, yeah, he's got a lot of them working for him. And, given the fact that we had Judge and Caesar appear on this one, if we had Queen show up somewhere in the chapter, we would have all the former members of MADS within the same chapter. But that didn't happen. That's okay. We have no idea if Queen is still alive or not. I hope King is. Don't care if Queen is still alive. But we end up seeing that, his intention is to have this like giant, I was supposed to say online library, which I guess isn't too far from it. It's supposed to be, he wants to have that everybody around the world can access it and add their own knowledge and everything like that. And of course, as a lot of people did, my brain went to, oh god, Vegapunk wants to make Wikipedia. Please, dear God, make sure everybody cites their sources and make sure that's their valuable source and shows their work whenever they're putting any information into here. Please. Did you hate it when your teacher was like, no, you can't use Wikipedia as a source, but you can use it to find other sources? My English teacher, when I was in junior and senior year, she had, it's like, well, we can't use Wikipedia specifically as a source. And her reasoning behind this was, well, anybody can edit it. And she had pointed out that, like, Stephen Colbert from the Colbert Report, because that was on at the time, way back in, like, 2008, 9, 10 range when I was in junior and senior year. That was when the Colbert Report was still on and everything. And she's like, well, he tells his people to go on and put things on there that aren't true. And, I wasn't extremely familiar with Stephen Colbert at the time. I mean, I think I knew what The Daily Show was and everything, and I knew what the Colbert Report was, but, at the time I just wasn't paying attention to it. And I think now if I point it out to her, I'm like, well, okay, so that was a character he was pretending to be. He didn't actually believe most of the things he was saying. It was an inside joke. So, and Wikipedia has people that are, that their job is to make sure to go through and like cite all of the sources in it and make sure that everything is correct. So I would assume that if Vegapunk ever did end up setting up his brain to actually be that way, that it would end up being that, he would probably end up having it be that there would be, I guess, some form of like moderators on the, Vegapunkopedia. I highly doubt I'm the first one that thought of that, but Vegapunkopedia, I'll throw that in there. And we'll probably end up seeing it that if he ever did end up doing that, that there would be something along those lines, unless the government gets to him first. But then again, okay, side note, since we don't know exactly the full effect of what happens after someone with a devil fruit dies, what happens to the things that they did with their devil fruit beforehand, like for example with Totland right now, since we do not know if Big Mom is alive or dead right now, we saw Zeus in the last chapter. We saw Zeus in the chapter where they fought against Shark, but the Jinbei Seraph, but we don't know if that, Zeus is now kind of more bonded to Nami, but he was still originally made from a piece of Big Mom's soul. Does that mean that even though if Big Mom did die, which we haven't gotten confirmation on whether or not Big Mom and Kaido are still alive yet, although Kaido does to a degree that get brought up in this chapter, we don't know if either of them are still alive. And if they aren't, does that mean that, all of Big Mom's homies, specifically Zeus and Prometheus and Hera and Napoleon and any of the ones that are made with her specific soul, specifically those four, would they be able to live on for a while until whatever remained of their lifespan is gone? As opposed to like a whole bunch of the other homies that were on, Totland and everything, like the Big Mama Shanter and any of the other ones that were on the island, because we saw so many of them get destroyed during Luffy and Cracker's fight in the forest, because we just saw them like all basically die of fright from having to be around Cracker. So we don't know exactly if it would be that all of those other homies would just straight up just like how's that gonna, like, are they just gonna like straight up stop working or whatever? But that's for a different theory. But in that regard, that's for a different video if I end up doing anything about that. But the question is, like, with Punk Hazard, with Aokiji and Kuzan, that was wrong, those are the same people. When Kuzan and Sakazuki had their giant fight there and everything, and now it's been turned into a giant half-fire, half-ice Pokeball-looking island. Like, if both of them die, I would assume that that is going to remain the way that it is. I don't think that Punk Hazard is going to change. But, like, with Sugar, she got knocked out, and then everybody, untoyed, became real, became normal again. So, how does that work? There's those questions of like, okay, so where do the rules end? Like, if Vegapunk ended up dying, if Vegapunk gets killed by, Cypher Pole Zero that have shown up on the island with Lucci and Stussy and Kaku, if he gets killed by them, what, if him and like all 6 satellite bodies all get destroyed, what happens to Vegapunk's brain? Is his brain going to just shrivel up back to like the size of like a normal brain and then just like die? Or is it going to stay, like, if he has it like on some form of life support? I would assume it's not just like literally sitting there like a giant brain sitting there on the ground. I'm assuming it's like in something like, some type of a liquid container that's supposed to keep it hydrated and everything like that. Like the same type of stuff that would be inside of your skull and everything. I would assume it's something along those lines. So it's like a giant brain floating in a jar. Very, very large jar. But, is it supposed to be that that brain is now going to, is it just going to stay there with like all of the knowledge that it has accumulated over the years from Vegapunk and his satellite bodies and everything? Or is it, hold on, I gotta fix my light. Or is it going to just shrivel up and you can't access that data anymore? Also, there's the whole question of would he be able to like digitize all of the data to a degree, like whatever the, his one piece equivalent of digitizing all of the data, to still have it be, accessible by people around the world, to have it be accessible by other researchers around the world. I'm sure a lot of the medical knowledge that he has there would be something that Chopper would be extremely interested in. Same thing with any of the historical knowledge. Robin would like that. Any of his, robotic knowledge and everything like that. Frankie and Usopp would find that wonderful. I'm sure there's even something there because, like, well, Vegapunk made like that food creation machine, and I don't think Sanji would find that as an insult. I think he would want to taste the food, and he would probably find a way to like improve upon it. So there's like all of that stuff. So like all of that knowledge, would that just go poof and disappear if Vegapunk died? I don't know. Um, but we see this conversation happen, and Jinbei's like, well, what if people put like bad things into it? Like, would you have access to my brain, or would it be something that I could voluntarily, go and access somewhere? Jinbei voices his concerns and everything, which is fair enough. Chopper also just looks at Vegapunk like he's cool, also, which I'm just like, okay, yeah. And then we have this moment where Bonnie is just like, okay, screw this. I'm tired of listening to you ramble because, like, Vegapunk's like, when Jinbei voices his concerns, Vegapunk's like, oh, if you focus on that, science won't move forward. And that just kind of sets Bonnie off, which is fair enough considering everything that we've seen her go through with her father and everything in that regard. And she's just like, oh, well, yep, nope, you haven't changed. Pulls out the lightsaber, pulls that out and is ready to attack Vegapunk, has him like pinned with it, and he's like right in the middle of a dramatic moment, not helping. I apologize, my lighting source is being very annoying right now. If I'm a little bit more in shadow, I apologize. I can't get it to get any brighter, and it's not working correctly right now, so I apologize. But yeah, we see Vegapunk, we see Bonnie get ready to attack Vegapunk with the lightsaber, and he's just like, Bonnie, no, you can't do that, it doesn't work correctly. And then like we just see all these bugs swarm in and everything, and they scare Bonnie because it's more of a it's a defective lightsaber because it actually acts more as like a a lightsaber bug zapper. Yeah. And like we just see all of these bugs come swarming in, and they attack Bonnie, and she just passes out and everything. And then Luffy is just like, oh, look, I found a stag beetle. And I'm just like, Chopper is more worried about Bonnie and everything, which is just funny. And like Jinbei even tried to like talk Bonnie out. I was like, you can't kill Vegapunk or you'll have more enemies than you can shake a stick at. Kind of Bonnie already has more enemies than you can shake a stick at, considering that CP0 is there to, A, return the Kuma Seraph, but also kill Bonnie. So Bonnie passes out, and then we have this moment that Vegapunk talks about his failed projects. He's like, the only reason I'm alive is because that saber failed, or whatever. And he's just kind of sad about that. And Luffy, and he goes like, well, I heard that you went to Wano recently and everything like that, and I heard that there were two dragons there and everything. And he goes like, yeah. And Luffy goes like, yeah, that was Momo. He ate your fake devil fruit or whatever that was on Punk Hazard. And Vegapunk's like, well, I made that 20 years ago, and it's been on Punk Hazard for that amount of time. I left it there because it was a failure, and I left it there because it failed. And Luffy's like, but it wasn't a failure. It worked amazingly. He's able to turn into a giant dragon, and now he's the protector of Wano and everything. He looks like a giant, other version of Kaido and everything. And Vegapunk's question is, well, what color is he? And Luffy goes, pink. And then Vegapunk goes into basically the Perona effect, as I'm referring to it, where he's just like, see, you see, it was a failure. He's just like face down in the dirt, like just sad and everything like that. We saw Luffy and Sanji and Zoro and Frankie get when they were all affected by Perona's hollows way back on Punk Hazard and everything. And we just see how like Vegapunk is just like, see, it was a failure. It was pink. And Jinbei's like, so not only is he a genius scientist, he's also a perfectionist, I see. And then Luffy's just like, most people would be like, hey, it turns the person that ate it into a giant F-off dragon. Just because they're pink instead of blue does not make a problem. Does not a problem this makes. But in Vegapunk's opinion, because he's a perfectionist, that would be the case. And, so we have that interaction. And then we have this moment where, Luffy's like, well, you made this giant, this giant robot, didn't you? And light source, sorry, being annoying. And, you know, Vegapunk's like, well, no, I didn't make that. I found that. That's actually a robot that is about 900 years old, and about 200 years ago, it climbed either through or over the Grand Line, or up the Red Line. I don't remember what the exact translation was, but it attacked Marie-Joie about 200 years ago, which is stated by Robin to be at the same time that the discrimination against fishmen occurred. So I'm assuming the world government assumed, particularly the Gorosei and Imsama, Gorosei at the time, probably were like, oh, well, this came from, they were like, they were allies of Joy Boy in the past, so they may have this left over, and they use that to attack us. So discrimination against fishmen, even more, and everything. But we have this, Vegapunk's like, no, it came from a ancient civilization and everything, which, was at the same time as when we have, like, Shaka is, like, having the other Straw Hats watch this footage, and, like, they see that Luffy and Jinbei and Chopper are fine, and that they've met up with Bonnie and everything, and that they're talking to the Stella body, Vegapunk, and everything. So we see all of that. And we're getting this, information dumped by Shaka and by Vegapunk himself. And it's just like, no, this giant robot was actually, made about 900 years ago, 200 years ago, attacked Marie-Joie and everything, but it stopped before it could actually cause any damage. The power supply ran out. And, a lot of people are thinking, a lot of people in general in the One Piece community are like, well, the power supply must be something to do with possibly the Nika Nika, with the Nika Devil Fruit, with the sun, because of a lot of that, insinuation of the sun and the dawn and the coming dawn and everything like that. That there might be like a connection there, which I can go for. But the thing that I thought of was, and this is where the Disney brain is coming in. So there's the Disney movie that's Atlantis: The Lost Empire that came out in, I think, 2001, I want to say. It's, it takes place in like 1919 or 1918 range, and, just go watch the review of it if you want to have a more full in-depth version of the story and everything. But they end up finding this ancient city of Atlantis, which has actually been buried underneath the Earth's crust. It goes over the fact that, several thousand years ago, Atlantis was like the peak of technology, had, so many weapons and everything like that, that like other civilizations at the time barely could even dream about, and everything, that they had stuff that was like before the Egyptians and the Mayans and everything like that, that they had all of this other stuff, including this endless power source. And it's revealed what we see within the opening part of the movie, and then later on in the middle of the movie, is that their power source is this giant crystal. And it's this, the heart of Atlantis is what it's referred to as. And this heart of Atlantis is, it is used to like power all these different, giant stone warriors that are designed to be able to like produce this force field that helps protect Atlantis whenever it is being attacked. And we see that the power source, the crystal, can really only be fully used when it is being merged and controlled by a member of the royal bloodline. And specifically, a human, specifically a member of the royal bloodline. Specifically, both cases we end up seeing in the course of the movie are that it is both female, because it's Kita's mother and then Kita later on, when they, end up merging with the crystal, not her father. So it's hinted that it might be like, it may have to be a female, but we're not sure. And that what ends up happening is, the crystal merges with, the one of royal blood, and then that person is able to then, send the power where it needs to go. In this case, in the first case, in the beginning of the movie, Kita's mother uses it to make the giants have the giant force field to be able to protect a good, part of the city. And then another one at the end of the movie, Kita uses it to be able to make the giant force field again to protect them from the incoming lava from the volcano. Lava, magma, whatever. And, it then, helps rejuvenate the city and everything like that, because all of the Atlanteans have these crystals that they wear that are tied to this main crystal. And, these crystals are what helps keep them alive. It helps with healing. It helps with longevity and long lifespans and everything like that. because we see earlier on in the movie, or partway through the movie, we see these crystals. Kitty uses the crystal to be able to heal Milo from an injury. Not an extremely severe injury, but an injury nonetheless. And we see some other things that result in that, showing off what the power can do and everything. And even later on in the sequel, we see some additional things about like what the Atlantean power source can do. So it's a little bit more of like, well, this crystal, I'm doing a comparison where like this crystal, this power crystal, the Heart of Atlantis, also can result in, these ancient machines coming to life and everything like that, because we also see the Leviathan earlier on in the movie that is this giant ancient, mechanical lobster crab crustacean thing that is designed to help protect what would be an entry to the city, to the area where Atlantis now lies. And then in other cases, there's other golems that are designed to help protect Atlantis and everything like that are powered by this crystal, or at the very least are connected to the crystal, because in the second movie we see that since they have their power crystals already, or since the crew that went there in the first place have their crystals, they're able to get past the Leviathan because it recognizes them as allies. Also, Atlantis has their own ancient language and everything like that. I talked about this a little bit more in the Atlantis video and such. And I actually have like another Disney One Piece video I actually have like a thought for that I'm going to be working on. Don't know exactly when it's going to come up, but soon. I'm also working on a bunch of Uta videos because that is stuck in my head right now, but I have other things to deal with that. But what we get to is, of course, Luffy then gets angry at Vegapunk because he's like, hey, you did something bad to Bonnie. And Vegapunk's like, what do you even know about that? Just like, what do you know about that, you brat? And Luffy's like, well, you did something and now you have to apologize. And Vegapunk's kind of like, well, yeah, I do need to apologize to Bonnie, and there's something I need to give her. And he also looks at Luffy and he's just like, but I want you to take me off of Egghead. And we don't see Luffy's reaction to this specifically. And the thought that I had that popped into my brain in this regard for how Luffy might be able to get Vegapunk off of Egghead is, well, there's the question of how far can Vegapunk leave from Egghead in order, before, I don't know, there's like irreparable damage done to, like, I don't know, the other part of his brain or something like that. How far can he go that his antenna still works to still send information back and forth? And the question is, how far can the different, the other Vegapunk bodies go? We saw Lilith outside of the island, but we don't know exactly how far they're able to go away from the island at various points in time. Again, that all just depends. And I don't necessarily think Vegapunk wants to just leave the island in order to have, like, the rest of the researchers that work there end up getting hurt. As like consequences for him leaving the island cause them to get hurt. I would hope that Shaka and the rest of the Vegapunks would be trying to help keep the other people, the other researchers that work on the island, the one that make the food and everything like that for York, and do any of the other stuff that they have to do, bring blueprints and bring mechanical equipment and everything like that, resources and everything like that to where all the Vegapunks are. I would hope that they would want to make sure that those guys are all safe. If, for dealing with, CP9 and everything like that. I would like to hope so. Given Rob Lucci's past and Stussy, the only one that I can see out of those three having any form of compassion for the people that were there would be Kaku. And I don't know exactly what will happen with that. But we see some of that with, the rest of Straw Hats finding out that, Kaku, that, Rob Lucci is there. And like Nami and Brooke were at the tea party, but I don't think they ever really saw Stussy, so I don't think they would be able to recognize Stussy, and also she's in a mask at the moment, so there's that. But the other question that I kind of thought of was like, how is Vegapunk expecting Luffy to get him off the island? How is he expecting that to happen? And what popped into my brain, because I'm strange, was because Luffy has, he has the Nika Devil Fruit. If he goes into his Gear 5th form, would he be able to go to where Vegapunk's brain was? Because he can, manipulate matter to a degree, within, I guess, what qualifies as parameters of a cartoonish matter, would he be able to like take Vegapunk's brain and like fold it in on itself, like infinitely fold it in on itself, and then put it back into Vegapunk until Vegapunk is able to leave the island, and then they can set up a new thing somewhere else. Like, I don't know, take Vegapunk to Elbath and set up a new something there and everything like that, since they already know that Saul is on Elbath and everything, and they can maybe have an ally there. Would that be a possibility? Get, you know, Vegapunk to where him and the rest of the satellite bodies can go and maybe go and join the Revolutionary Army. Also, my thought for the end of the chapter where we see Kuma get up and start running off, I have a feeling that that has to do with what Vegapunk wants to give Bonnie. I have a feeling it's something that will help her find her father in that regard. Might be a connection between the real Kuma, the Seraph Kuma, and Bonnie. Might be something that Vegapunk can set up with that, but I don't really know. We don't have enough information about that at the moment, but I'm sure other people will speculate more than I will. But I do kind of want to see what will happen with that. But like, yeah, I just had the image of like Luffy just like picking up Vegapunk's giant brain and then like infinitely folding it in on itself when he's in his Gear 5th form, and then like putting that into Vegapunk again. Don't know if that's what's exactly going to happen or not, but we'll see. But that's what I had for this. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Yeah, comments, please tell me. I know that I probably missed something in what Vegapunk said, and I didn't go over super about like what CP0 is doing at the moment, but those are what I wanted to talk about with this. I am probably going to end up having a couple of videos that end up dealing with like One Piece and, you know, Disney comparisons and stuff like that, because that is the way that my brain works. So I thank you for watching. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!
It means that once a day, I synchronize their experiences and knowledge through punk records. Their personality and duties are separate, but each of their experiences is worthwhile.